the late John Ritter. Sweetest guy I've ever glued makeup on. He was so generous and so just lovely to be around. And it also helped that, who directed Last Picture Show? Bogdanovich? Yeah, so I'm sitting there doing the makeup on John, all of a sudden I tap on my shoulder, excuse me young man, do you mind if I talk to my friend? It's Peter Bogdanovich. So they sit and talk about old Hollywood for 2 hours while I'm making this guy up. So for me, it's like, don't even pay me, I'm just gonna sit and listen to you guys talking. So it was pretty awesome.
So where's the book, Paul?
The book?
Why don't we have the book? I mean, this is now like decade 3 we're on now, you're working on. You've walked with giants, you've done it all. Where's the book? Where's The Grand Illusions by Paul Jones?
Well, the weird thing is, Grand Illusions, I mean, you know, I was a kid of the 80s, so I grew up with Tom Savini. So I've actually worked with Tom. So, and he's still up there on a pedestal for me. I mean, Tom's the man. And he brought the essential book, Grand Illusions. It came out, I think I got it for my birthday, which is like 85 or something like that.
I think it was actually like 82.
Was it really? We got it in England in 85, yeah. But surely Grand Illusions is where it's at. Like the basics are in that book. Anything that's not in that book, you really don't need to know if you're starting out. So I don't think anything I could tell you would add to that. I mean, my old boss, Bob Keane, the guy I worked with in Hellraiser back in England, Nightbreed, he used to say that it's not the stories of on-set that people want to know about, it's the stories from off-set. So he was going to write a book called Kiss and Make Up. But the stories he told me this one story from Empire Strikes Back. And the wrap party for Empire Strikes Back was on the Dagobah set. So it was muddy and there's vines everywhere, and they built this kind of like dance floor in the middle of the lake, and you had to go across this gantry to get to it. And the producer's daughter was 17, and she wore a very tight-fitting white dress. And she was really into the monsters. So Bob and Nick Maley and a couple of other guys were like, oh, well, we'll show you around the effect shop. You've got to come through here. So they had to climb over this big muddy hill. Now, muddy, slippy, white dress, not a good idea. So Bob and Nick are clambering over these hills, trying to stop this young girl who's the producer's daughter from slipping in the mud. They get to the makeup room, thank you very much, a great kind of show and tell. She gets back to her dad, her ass is covered in muddy handprints from Bob and Nick, who were trying to stop her from slipping in the mud. Yeah, they never lived that one down.
We got some more questions for the talented Mr. Jones. Right in the back there.
What's the biggest jump in the whole makeup industry that you lived through in your whole career?
A few of them, I guess, huh? The biggest jumps, the biggest advances, the biggest things that kind of changed the game, I guess, is what we're talking about. Besides CGI, maybe, I don't know.
Well, actually, it's something I'm doing right now. A guy named Christian Tinsley, for a movie called Passion of the Christ, they had a scene where Christ gets flayed, and it was an entire body, amazing makeup, and it's all kind of like ripped skin appliances. Now, in the old days, you would have used foam latex or, I don't know, gelatin, I guess. Now, they weren't shooting in a cold climate. It was going to be played every single day, and they didn't want to spend 8 hours doing the makeup. So we used to use a material, well, we still use a material called Bondo, which is a Prosade glue, which is a liquid, left to dry, and it goes really thick and kind of gummy. And we use it for filling edges and filling seams and getting a bit of imperfections. Now, Prosade will dry quite thick, and it's kind of translucent, very, very sticky. So Christian said, what if we just thicken this stuff up and put it in a mold, and then let it dry, and then just stuck it on someone's skin? So you make the prosthetic out of the glue that you glue it on with, or you used to glue it on with. So we came up with this technique, and they're called Tinsley Transfers. And you know the kids' tattoos you used to get in bubble gum, and you kind of peel it off, stick it on the skin, and wet it, and peel it off? So he found a manufacturer of that paper, and sticks the paper to the prosthetic, peels off the backing, sticks it on the skin, sprays water on it, peels it off, like self-sticking appliances. So he came up with this technique, and it's now an industry standard. It's changed the way we do makeups. You can do Benjamin Button, Greg, a friend of mine, did all the makeups, or half the makeups with transfers, just like foreheads and eye bags and jowls, things that you would spend hours gluing on. He'd get these things on in minutes now. And they're made of glue, so they stick all day, and they come off at the end of the day when you want them to, and they're waterproof. It's like really has changed the industry. That's like the main thing for makeups. Silicone prosthetics now. This is one of the Erathian makeups from Defiance. So it's one of the male ones. So this is a translucent material. You paint it to look like skin. It moves like skin, and it lasts all day. So this The difference with foam and this, foam, you had to paint it to look real, and you had to light it to look real. This stuff is a translucent material, so this absorbs light as opposed to reflects light. So now you don't have to work as hard. You don't have to have any talent, really. The materials do it for you. Trust me, I know I've been winging it for many years. But silicon is where it's at, you know. This is the industry standard, but I always say, well, a few friends of mine say that, silicon for show, foam for a pro. Start with foam latex, learn how to paint it well, and then use silicon, and your job's half done.
Just every FX artist talks about CGI, you know, it's the arch enemy of the horror fan, right? But most effects artists will say, when combined with prosthetic properly, and with skill, that you can do things that you couldn't do. Do you believe in that? And tell me about a story or two that on a film you worked on where you skillfully combined them.
It's a skillfully bit that threw me off. CG, I am not an enemy of CGI. I love CGI. I mean, it hasn't. People say, oh, it's hard to get in. It's hard to get into makeup effects starting out now because of CG. But the guys already established in prosthetics, we're as busy as ever. Because directors still love the practical side, but now they don't have to rely on it as much. So I've actually built things the same way I would build them 10 years ago, but without any pressure, because they're not the only thing you're going to see on camera. So we're actually grateful for CGI, because now when we have something that doesn't quite work on set, we fix it. Goes into post, we fix it. CGI stands for couldn't get it. So CG guys are my best friend. I actually make friends with them on set, even if I've never worked with them before, because I know 99% of the time there's going to be something the director wants changed, and he's going to change it in post when I'm not normally there. So I make friends with the CG guys, so I'm still part of the process, because it's really important to be a team player in any film. You want to be part of the process. So even if I do a makeup, there's a makeup I did for the new Mortal Instruments movie. And it's a guy who's like covered in scars and he's kind of bony, but he has empty eye sockets. So the CG guys were going to empty his eye sockets with computer graphics, but the rest of him is prosthetic. It's what we refer to as a hybrid. It's half CG, half prosthetic. And I think that's the future. A lot of directors now are understanding that the two mediums can be combined instead of using one or the other. Now we can do both.
Questions? You, miss.
Me?
You.
I got a couple things. One, my favorite bad guy is Pinhead, by the way. And one of these years, I like to dress up for Halloween at my age, and I give out candy in the costume, by the way. So one of my goals is to be Pinhead for Halloween. All right, so I don't have a problem getting the mask and the cape and all that. That's and the black outfit. That's easy. My issue has always been putting the white makeup on and letting it dry. It takes forever. I've got partly oily skin. I've got large pores. What do I do? What's out there that I can use? Do I blow dry it? What do I do to get that skin to dry off quickly so I can put the makeup on in the morning, or in the evening, or?
Well, the first thing you gotta do is be a prick, apparently. And then maybe it'll all fall into place, but let's let the expert answer.
Or getting it to stay on. What are your tips for what's out there?
There are a lot
cheap
of products.
stuff.
There are a lot of products out there. The toupee industry has actually been really helpful for us, because when you're sticking something to a guy's head, and the guy wants it to stay on all day,
Right.
and he wants to stop from perspiring, there's actually a product. A few companies make it. Do you live in Toronto?
No.
Okay. Well,
You
there's a
can't
few
tell by
makeup.
my accent where I live? Sorry.
Any kind of good makeup store will sell a product called Top Guard, which is like an acrylic acetate. It's basically a sealer for skin
Okay.
that allows you to glue anything to it, and it won't come off when you sweat.
Okay.
If you overuse it, you can damage your skin. It's not really good to use around eyes, but if you thin it down enough, you can put it on your cheeks and your forehead,
Okay.
and your makeup will last a bit longer. What kind of makeup are you using?
I bought this white clown makeup.
Yeah.
Put it on with the sponge and everything, and it looks good when you put it on thick enough and everything. It's just it takes forever to dry, and then you gotta wait for it to
water-based,
dry to put another layer on
Yeah.
to make my skin look super smooth.
Right.
Because of the pores and everything.
You haven't tried grease paint?
No, not yet, because again, I got oily skin as it is, so I don't
Yeah.
want to, move around too much.
Grease paint's pretty good. You can
Is
get
it?
some really nice grease paint. It'll go on pretty opaque, and
Okay.
it won't come off,
Will
and you can powder
it'll
it.
fill?
Yeah, exactly. So put the grease paint on. You get a nice opaque layer. Give it a good powder,
I got
and then
that,
you can
yeah.
add more color to it. In the old days, I did a Highlander movie many years ago, and all the makeups were grease paint. And now it's kind of weird to paint with grease paint. We use it for touching up on set 'cause it's
Right.
fast. But now, pretty much all our makeups, we use these guys. It's basically hard. It's like a plastic, and you spray alcohol on it, and it turns into a paint. You can get it quite opaque. You can put this through an airbrush. It's called Skin Illustrator. Between this and transfers, it's like saved a lot of people's jobs because it stays where you put it. You can wear it all day long. So it's a little harsh sometimes if you use it too much. It's alcohol based, but when it's on, it's on. When you take it off, you don't have to worry about it coming off during the course of the day. It's really good stuff. Any good makeup store will have it.
And then the last thing is like putting the black around the eyes, like how you use eyeliner.
Mm-hmm.
When you put that with the white, it smudges, and what do you
Well,
recommend for that? I mean, I know I'm like basic here for everybody
basic.
else,
Yeah,
but that's
no,
how you
no.
start. You gotta start somewhere.
It's the same thing. Try and get yourself a good, like a face powder. So any kind of paint you put on, use a hairdryer and then powder it, and it will kind of set it in place. The old grease paints were designed with an oil to get it out of the container onto your skin, and then they designed powders to powder and soak up the oil. And that's why it's called setting powder, because it sets the makeup on the skin.
Right. Okay.
Okay? Cool.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the man? Yeah.
It might be a two-parter, but what would you consider your favorite work, and what would you consider your best work?
Favorite and best.
Well, I always think your best work is the stuff that nobody really sees. Because you are trying to fool people. You're trying to convince them that what they're watching is real. So if I build something that isn't quite real, people kind of notice it, and I haven't done my job properly. So I've done a couple of things which have completely fooled people, and other things which haven't. So that's probably the answer to that question. My favorite job, you can work on a movie and have a horrible, horrible time, and then you do a makeup and it makes the movie for you. Or you can do movies that you have an incredible time and you hate everything in it. Silent Hill 1 and 2 are good examples of both. So I wasn't really happy with the stuff I did in Silent Hill 1. It was a two-part movie. Patrick Totopoulos was hired originally to do the creatures, and then because it was being shot in Toronto, they said, well, there's a lot of stuff that he's not doing. So they hired me to do that, and then they shipped all Patrick's stuff up to me, and I supervised the whole movie. So it was an incredible time on set. It was great to be in charge of Patrick's stuff, but I thought my stuff was okay. I mean, I did the guy in the bathroom stall, I did him, I did the girl in the bed with a little tent. So it was okay, but it wasn't the show-stealing stuff like the Red Pyramid and all that kind of stuff was really the cool stuff. And then Silent Hill 2 came along, and they said, well, Patrick's out of the picture now, so he's going to do some concept designs for us, and contractually we have to use him. But you're going to be in charge of everything, so you'll get to rebuild, redesign. I was like, yes. And then I saw the movie. So I loved the stuff I did. I thought we busted our ass. We did some really cool stuff in the movie, but then the writing and the direction just it's kind of lame. But there you go.
I know we have more questions. In the back.
Tell me about Buzzkill, your short trailer debut.
Buzzkill.
Buzzkill. Okay, I'm an effects guy. Like, I've never thought of being a director, never considered I'd ever get the chance to. I'm married to a producer, and she's always said, you should direct. Well, why? Well, because then I'd see you more. So she's been trying to convince me to be a director. So anyway, I know a distribution company named Raven Banner, and they've done a lot of low-budget distribution. Anyway, they were in a meeting, and there was some investors, and they said, we want to do a low-budget horror movie. And he said, really? I said, oh, that's great, because we've got a great monster guy who can build some monsters for us. He was awesome. What's his name? Paul Jones. Really? Oh, we know Paul. Does Paul want to direct it? I'll ask him. Duh. So yeah, we have pre-sales with Anchor Bay UK, Anchor Bay Canada, and the company in Germany, company in Japan. We had a pitch with TMI, and looks like hopefully this year, if everything slots into place, which it tends to not do in the film industry, but yeah, it looks like I'm going to be directing a horror movie called Buzzkill. It's a Nazi lab. Yeah, anybody heard of Frankenstein's Army? Yeah. Those guys got there first. But we've been trying to make Buzzkill. We've had the script for about 10 years. I have maquettes of about 8 years old. So our designs are very much like Frankenstein's Army. The difference is ours is a bunch of history students checking out the history of a building that had a bunch of experiments done in World War II. And they uncover stuff that's been kind of kept alive in the basement, and then they all get killed. So it'd be really gory, creatures are going to be cool, and I get my name on the poster, hopefully.
Well, that's a good question. Are you doing the creature effects for this?
Yes, I'm either getting paid to direct or do the creature effects. They've told me pick one. So I'm going to flip a coin.
Any other questions for the man? Right there.
What's your biggest makeup disaster?
Ah, we want the dirt.
You're about to see it.
Outside of this guy here, biggest makeup disaster.
I don't know. I mean, what qualifies as a disaster? I mean, I've done makeups where a director wasn't happy, but the producer was, and the opposite. You know, I tend to be very practical. I don't design things that I know will be a pain in the ass to work with on set. Like, you can build the most kind of amazing, complicated makeup in the whole world, but you have to shoot it, and it has to work within the confines of the film set. So it's a very rushed, very crazy atmosphere. So if you need 9 hours to do a makeup, they're not going to give you 9 hours. Even if you ask for it and they agree with it, they're never going to give you 9 hours. I've turned out to do makeups that I've said, this will take me an hour and a half. And he said, yeah, no problem. I said, an hour and a half? Yeah, no problem. On the day, the morning of, I need an hour and a half. Yeah, no problem. 2 hours later, they're like, okay, you got 15 minutes. But I need an hour and a half. We don't have an hour and a half, you've got 15 minutes. So you do your best. But working in the confines of a film set, it's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. So you have to try, and when you bring stuff to set, try and bring it that you can, if you have to compromise or modify it. Because if you can't, and you can't give the producer something, then you kind of screw yourself as well as them. So you have to find stuff that you can modify.
Let's talk about the business a little bit, because I know it's feast or famine sometimes in this business, right? I mean, are you finished Pompeii, or are you still working on it?
Still what?
Okay, so you're still doing Pompeii, which is a big movie, right? But then you'll go and do smaller films, short films. You diversify yourself because you gotta live. So let's talk about the frankness of the business. I think it was Orson Welles said about the film business that it was like 90% hustle and 10% art, and it was no way to make a living. Talk about the living. Would you recommend that people pursue this line of work?
Yeah, that is really tough. I mean, Toronto's kind of a boom right now. We're really busy right now. But 2.5 years ago, I was picking up my phone and checking it was still working, because nobody was making films in Toronto. Toronto's a service town, so we don't so much produce, well, Canada essentially. We have an industry, but it's not that commercial, and it's really just for us. Whereas Americans love us because we're half the price it is to make the movie in the States, so they come up and film all our movies in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. The industry being what it is, I would say if you can make a living doing what you love, then great. But I would never stop people from doing makeup effects just because it's a business. I've done okay. My friends have done okay. There's times when we haven't done okay, but we're still here. I love makeup effects. I can't imagine a day going by without me doing some makeup on myself or my kids or somebody at work or sculpting something or painting something. So I've really got no choice, you know, unless the stupid directing thing takes off, but we'll have to wait and see about that. Yeah, be versatile. Don't limit yourself to one thing. Like, I started out in England, and I started off as a painter. I was painting corpses. I'd originally done makeup as a hobby, and then all of a sudden, we did this movie called Nightbreed, and it was like there's all these mechanical creatures in it. So one weekend I went home and I made a little mechanical puppet. It's about a head about this big, and it had eyebrows, it had an eye blink, it had lip. I'd never done any of this before, but I'd seen the guys around me kind of do it. So I borrowed some materials, went home, made it, brought it back in on the Monday, and Bob was like, "You made this? When?" "This weekend." "I didn't know you did animatronics." "Well, I don't. I've never done it before." "Okay, I'm going to give you the berserkers," which were these huge kind of hulking ape-like creatures, and I'm like, "But I don't know what I'm doing." He goes, "Oh, you'll figure it out." And that was what it was like. So Next thing you know, I did nothing but animatronics for 4 bloody years. And I was like, but I can sculpt better than all these guys. And he goes, oh, you do really good mechs. We're going to get you to do mechs. But it's really helped me, because since I came to Canada, any script that I get sent, I'm not job. And TV shows usually shoot 12 episodes, 10, 12 episodes. So each episode is shot over about 9 days. So you do the math, and you think, oh my God, I'm going to be working right up to Christmas. This is awesome. And that's pretty much a blessing. A movie, like I've worked on, for example, Pompeii. We're doing this movie with Paul Anderson. It's like Titanic with a volcano. It's like a love story. It's all set in ancient Pompeii. It's AD 79, and it's guys in togas, and Kiefer Sutherland's in it, and he looks mean, and it's all going to be really cool. But there's very little on it for me in terms of on set. So I probably spent about 12 weeks working on it in the shop, and I've been on set twice. So I actually don't like film sets. I've never liked them. I think they're cool to walk on, to visit, and it's cool to see actors in costume. But once you get into that environment, it's really stressful. It's the reason I'm gray, is because of going on set. None of this comes from being in my workshop. That's my home. That's where I feel more comfortable. My ideal job is to have a workshop with a big sliding door in the corner, and I just build stuff, I push it through the slot, and I slam the door closed. And I never see it again, and somebody else goes to set with it. So really, it really doesn't matter what the show is. I just love building the stuff. But yeah, sometimes I work for 3-4 months, I'm on set for 1 day. Sometimes I spend 2 or 3 weeks working, I'm on set every single day. Really depends on the show.
We had a question over here, so right there.
So many projects go into the prep stage, and then, being the industry that it is, it just doesn't happen or gets pushed. Are there any concepts or designs that you have that never saw the light of day that you're...
That's a good question. Everyone hear that? So many things, movies get announced and get pushed into pre-production and then never see the light of day. Has Paul ever done anything where he's been, deep in it, and then suddenly the plug is pulled?
Actually, yeah. A few years ago, usually with a film, I don't get involved until we're far enough along that it's going to happen. But there was a time I did this movie with Tom Savini, and it was called Slice, and it was kind of a high concept movie. We were going to make it as though somebody had found a film in a garbage can that was shot in the 70s, that had 70s actors in it, and the effects were done very practically. And they were going to release it as though it was, they'd found it and they'd made it and put it together. So we had Michael Berryman was going to be in it, Tom was going to be in it, and Tom was brought on board as a effects designer, and I was brought on board as the effects builder, but we were both doing stuff for it. So he would send me these film footages of his stuff he had in his shop, and he goes, maybe we can use this, maybe we can use that. And we started designing, we started building all the stuff for it. About 5 weeks in, get a call from the producer. Hey, can you stop building? Why? Well, the financing has fallen through, which is really rare. And we can't pay you anymore, so we don't want you building anything else that we can't afford. I'm like, oh, that sucks, okay. So what should I do with all this stuff? We had dead bodies and all these kind of living mannequins and prosthetics, and he goes, just put it in a box, and I'll, if the movie gets back up, I'll give you a call. Never heard from the guy again. 2 days later, I get a call from Tom, and he's like, did you fucking hear? I'm like, what? Fucking show's gone down. I said, yeah. He goes, I just bought a new car. So luckily I haven't, so it was okay. But yeah, it's really, really rare, because you have insurance, you have all these deals in place that, it's pretty much a done deal. It's so hard to get a movie made, especially an independent movie, that there's all these checks and balances, but once you get past a certain point, then it's pretty much free and clear. Then you can make the movie and it never gets released, but that's a whole different thing. That's a sales thing. So people just sometimes don't want the movie because there's too many other versions of it. So we're hoping with Buzzkill that people want to see it, because there's kind of a hate on for Nazi robots right now. So you want to see another one? Great, come watch our movie. But it may get to a point by the time we ever make it that they don't want to see it. So we'll wait and see. But as far as designing stuff that's never appeared in a movie, I'm drawing stuff all the time. So I've got like a library of sculpts and paintings and sketches. I do a lot of Photoshop stuff these days. And Silent Hill was a good example. Silent Hill 2. I did some designs that I just had in the drawer. And Michael's like, we need something for this cop in the mall. And I'm like, well, I did this kind of smiley face sketch a few years ago. This guy with his face stitched up, like a big smiley face. So I showed the director, and he goes, oh, that's it, good. I didn't take very long. I said, no, I did it 9 years ago. So.
Well, that's it, reduce, reuse, recycle. But those bodies for Slice, do you ever go back and reuse some of this stuff? I mean, are they still in boxes, or did they make their way into any other pictures in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I mean, you do recycle stuff, especially with working in Toronto, because the stuff's just there. There's 3 bodies hanging up downstairs. We made those originally for a movie called Solomon Kane. Anyone's ever seen that? It's Michael Bassett, the guy who wrote and directed Silent Hill 2. Did this kind of cool movie, and no one really saw it. But I had all these great body molds. So Silent Hill 2 comes along, and the director's like, we need some dead bodies. Oh, I've got some from this movie I did called Silent Hill from Solomon Kane. And he's like, hey, that was my movie. Yeah, I know. But we're paying you to do new ones. No, you're paying me to recycle. That's why I'm doing it for so damn cheap. So he's like, great. But yeah, you get to reuse stuff. I'm hoping that a lot of the zombie appliances we made for Resident Evil 5, 6, 7, 5, we'll get to reuse in 6, which we're hopefully going to go into production January. Yes, there's another one.
Questions? Is there anyone else who hasn't asked a question yet? Somewhere in the back. You right there.
What inspired you to be a special effects master?
Ah. Started as a painter, but what really inspired you? When you were a kid, were you looking at some of these guys with the Robertines, the Rick Bakers, and did you go, I want to do that?
Well, thank you very much for the master. That was really sweet. I'm not really good at anything enough to be called a master, but it's nice. I did, that's my wife bugging me. I think she's downstairs somewhere. I like getting a reaction out of people. I started out very simply when I was like 11 or 12, doing gore, doing cuts and wounds and stuff on people, because you can simulate that stuff pretty easily, but it gets the most reaction out of people. There's a great effect in First Blood when Stallone sews up his arm, and that was one of the first things I duplicated. I was about 12 or 13 when I came out. So I made a wound and stuck up my arm and showed my mom, and she's like, oh my God, oh, it's fake, okay. So I did that one too many times. I was using a craft knife in my bedroom when I was about 13, 14, and I sliced my hand open, 7 stitches right through the middle of my palm. Run in the living room, blood's everywhere. Mom, I cut myself really badly. She just goes, piss off. So I stand there bleeding on the carpet, and then she realizes it's real. It's the boy who cried blood. That's what I do.
Any other questions for the boy who cried blood? Before we get to you, my man, I'm going to go right to this lady over here in the back.
How come you don't act more in like the films you do? Like Constantine does a lot of like he'll act in some of the movies he does. Is there like a reason you don't?
Paul Jones, actor. Will we see that? Cameos or something?
Look at me. I mean, come on. I'm a behind-the-camera guy. Funnily enough, though, I am a full member of ACTRA, but as a puppeteer. We did a movie a couple of years ago called The Thing. It was like kind of a prequel, kind of sequel to the John Carpenter one. And the guys coming up from the States, AVI, Tom and Alec, they had brought all these incredible creatures up that all needed cables and radio controls. So they needed puppeteers. So there was only a couple of guys, and you have to be in the union to be a puppeteer on an IATSE show. You have to be an actor, technically, to puppeteer things and bring it to life. That's the rules. So they said, well, we'd like you to be involved. And I was like, great. So they bring me in, and they said, but you have to be in the union. So we finagled it and got me a full ACTRA membership, which is really hard to get. So I can audition for anything, and because I'm an actual ACTRA member now, but I don't know, I mean, I've been on camera before. I was a makeup effects extra in FX the series. I did this mechanical werewolf, and Cameron, who played Raleigh, and Carrie Ann Moss, who were both in it, they didn't know how it worked. So I had to put my baseball cap on back to front. I had long hair at the time, and they dressed me in this really nerdy t-shirt. And I kind of had to come in and pretend to plug it in, because they didn't know which plug went where. So I'm actually on camera doing that. It's a movie a few years ago now called Waxwork 2. And there's a severed hand at the beginning of the movie that comes to life and then kills a guy with a hammer. Don't ask me why, it's a kind of crazy movie. It's my hand. made a little appliance for my hand, and it comes up over the back of the couch, and then moves around, and runs down the couch, and runs up to a guy across the carpet, picks up the house. So it's my hand on camera, so I can kind of perform, but you don't have to see this. Because this is the bit I'm shy about, you know. So yeah, I mean, I played creatures, Nightbreed, everybody got in a monster suit. I've got friends who still do it now. It's just convenient to have the guy who built it, put them in the suit. In Buzzkill, it's all guys in my shop that are gonna play the monsters. Obviously, I'll bring in a movement coach and get them to kind of move the way I want. But yeah, you got to have a certain amount of enthusiasm to do this job, and I guess that comes across. But I have no aspirations of learning dialogue, not at all.
Now, we have about 10 minutes or so. Before we take another couple of questions, what are we doing here, Paul, and do we need audience members for this?
Well, I think we might have run out of time, but I'm going to take some of these down to my booth. But I want to show you this head. Now,
Hold this while you're working.
no, I'm good, I'm good. So when you do makeup, you can only go so far. So you basically build out from the person's face up to a point. You can give them big dentures, like Planet of the Apes, modify the skin, but you can only modify the human face so far without it all of a sudden becoming movement free. The foam gets so thick, or the silicone gets so thick that it doesn't move anymore. So we built this head. This is one of the characters from Defiance. It's called the Senso. And it's essentially a two-part piece. This part is a prosthetic. This part is mechanical. It's a bit tricky to figure out. We sculpted this part first, and sculpted this part second. It overlaps here, but goes underneath here. It's a tricky molding process. But it means this part here is glued to the actor. It's the actor's eyes. So when he makes his eyebrows move up and down, he gets all the expression. But obviously, he's got a full ape muzzle here, which he doesn't operate at all. That's all mechanical. So bear with me, and I'll plug this in. I'll show you how it works.
While Paul is working, is there one last question? I know you and one more from you. You want to wait?
I can wait, I can ask, if he doesn't mind.
He can talk while he works, right? What do you got?
Let's see, most makeup people have their own blood recipe. Do you have a blood recipe?
I'll hold the mic for this, Paul. You work for me. Blood recipe?
Yeah, blood can be a real pain. Pardon the pun. It tends to look different in certain circumstances. So I was always tinkering with my blood supply. Then I found a company in Mississauga that does food coloring for edible ice creams and stuff like that. So I come up with the ultimate color that I was totally happy with, that worked under any lighting condition, and gave it to them. And I said, listen, I can't even remember what I put in this. And they went, don't worry, we'll figure it out. Now I can buy blood color by the gallon. I just give them a code number, and they just ship it to me. And I just dump it in corn syrup, perfect blood. Chris, you did a movie recently.
Yeah, I did. I made a little movie. This is, again, Paul's sliding scale. I liked the way you slid your scale to 0 for my movie. It was great. I called Blood for Irina, and there's obviously a lot of blood in the movie. And if you watch my little podunk movie and notice that the blood looks a lot like the blood in Resident Evil 5, you'd be right. I got that secret sauce blood, 2 gigantic, huge mother bins, and we splashed that thing all over Toronto, Burlington, and Oakville, making this little movie. So, yeah, Paul's genius is alive on screen on my little movie, and I'm thankful for it.
So can you guys see this?
Everyone can see this okay? If you need to get closer, you can get closer. We got spaces. We can hoard up towards the front if you need a better look or need a picture, video, whatever you need.
So this is radio.
That's amazing. Disturbing.
Remember which does what. So remember, the actor has the facial prosthetic. So his own eyebrows. There you go. Of course, it's all opposite direction. So he's wearing this as a makeup. The upper half and the bottom half is me puppeteering. So when he moves his eyebrows, I will move whatever I need to move to get all these lips to kind of round. And these are radio-controlled servos. It's like the same you get in a radio-controlled car. And they're just mounted to little discs which have a cable mounted to them. And then when I move these joysticks here on the control, it sends a signal to the servo, which pushes a cable, which runs down into a foam latex mask. So as he's moving his expression, obviously I'm a bit out of practice. We just got picked up for season 2 of Defiance, so I'm gonna have to practice a bit more again, but it's been a while since we've played with it. But you can see I'll do it as simple as you've got one servo does that, one servo does that, one servo does that. You know, so each part of the mouth has a kind of a movement. So, and the battery's dying. So anyway, but there you go. So that is a mechanical mask. So if you've seen the Ninja Turtles movies, you've seen what else? Like any Harry and the Hendersons, a very good example. This is how it's done. It's usually a foam latex skin. It's nice and light. It doesn't take too much pressure from the servos. And it's already controlled. You usually have 4 or 5 guys off camera doing that. I was trying to do it all with one hand. It's a bit tricky, but there you go, mechanical head.
Are people allowed to touch this head? Can they?
Come on over now.
Oh, you anyone want to touch this thing? Feel it? Maybe
Yes.
have it bite you? Come on. When are you going to get another chance to do this? Look at this thing. So this is foam, rubber. Don't push it too hard.
How much of the remote control would be done live on set? How much would be pre-programmed?
We actually do have a little box that we use for the wide shots. So it's about 50-50. Sometimes we have a live person.
Well, hey, listen, everybody. That almost wraps it up here. Again, you are in the presence of a living legend, even though he's humble. Even though he's not born in Canada, that's a very Canadian way to present himself. So thank you, Paul Jones. Paul is downstairs with all his gore and all his gear, so feel free to come down, shake his hand, get something signed. Do you have anything to sign? Or he's got a pen in his hand. He's ready to do some damage. Come down and talk to him. So yeah, thanks for sitting through this. And any last parting words, Mr. Jones?
No, if you're into makeup, stay with it. It's not a dead art. It's really fun. And you know, if you get good enough, come and ask me for a job.
All right, thank you.